I got emails from a fair number of you troublemakers asking what I thought about Molly Jong-Fast, what I thought about her new book. I'm working. I've also gotten emails asking about the segment I've been talking about that we're planning on difficult mothers. And trust me, we're actively planning it. But to do it right, it's taking a little bit of time. So just bear with us. Initially, though, I thought, okay, I don't think much of Molly Jong-Fast as an intellect. Most people don't. She is on CNN, and like she used to be on MSNBC a lot, and now they've really dialed back on her appearances. I wonder if the book has anything to do with it that we're going to discuss. But I also think that MSNBC is so fucked after Joe Scarborough like defended Biden as like the best Biden ever and said Trump was a Nazi. And then when Trump won, he and Mika went to Mar-a-Lago and kissed the ring. And since then, like the viewership has cratered over there. And so, Molly Jong-Fast fashioned this career for herself after decades of trying to become famous and noteworthy and respected in the culture by becoming just this anti-Trump zealot. Like, and I don't care like what side of the aisle you're on, just be smart. Like if you're smart in your arguments, no matter what I think of your target, like I'll respect you. But she's not bright. And she's one of these middle-aged women who's like constantly floundering around. And you know how it's how the tell it's in her hair, which it is like four different colors at once. Okay. So it's not a well person. Okay. Not a well, when you're a teenager, you're in the manic panic section of the drugstore. Fine. Have at it. That's what you should be doing as a teenager. But at like 50, okay. So Molly Jong Fast is the daughter of a very famous author named Erica Jong. Her mother was famous, I believe, in the 70s for a book called Fear of Flying. It was very boundary pushing. It was ultra second wave feminist at the time. It introduced a very famous phrase into the lexicon. You can look it up if you want. I'm trying to dial back a little bit on unnecessary obscenities. Sometimes it's really called for, as you know. But this was also a time in America, like a lost time. I think a really glamorous time. And I wish I had been, really kind of it, just to witness it really in a way I could appreciate it. But this was a time when like authors in America were really like they were pop cultural figures. It like authors and thinkers were as famous as like movie stars and rock stars, or maybe just like a rung below, but they would often be on the cover of, Time magazine or on talk shows like nighttime talk shows, morning, daytime talk shows, like the Dick Cavett show. It was the era of like Norman Mailer and Mary McCarthy and Truman Capote, who was decompensating in real time. But it was also the era of like, like sort of pulp novelists would be on TV too, like Jackie Collins. It was just a much more fascinating, interesting time for it. Okay. Because you had people who really had something going on upstairs. It wasn't just a complete carpet bombing by Nepo babies, actors, pop stars, and influencers, which has sunk the discourse to just like subterranean levels. Okay. So, and this was also a time, that was a reflection of what Americans were like, the average American was doing, which included reading, reading books, both for pleasure and for edification. It was as normal and frequent in the culture as, inhaling streaming services are today. Okay. So I'm just setting the table because Molly has spent her entire adult life in competition with her mother. She is an only child, and she has been attempting to approach her mother's fame and accomplishments, if not outrun those, outpace those, destroy her mother, but get her mother's love. It's now this is someone who grew up in New York City. Again, the best psychotherapists in the world are here. I don't think Molly ever truly availed herself, and none of this has gone well for her because Molly, my opinion, she's not smart, she's not talented, she doesn't possess a winning personality. She's just a terrible person. They're just out there. The culture would have you believe that these people are on the spectrum They suffer some sort of social autism. They do not. They're just fucking terrible. Okay, so I'm going to read just a little bit of her new best-selling book. It's called How to Lose Your Mother, A Daughter's Memoir. And it's got all these blurbs from people. Like, by the way, when you see blurbs on a book, I'm going to let you in on a little industry secret. They don't mean anything. Often the people who blurb the books have not even read the books. And usually they are cocktail party friends. Lori Gottlieb, whose book, someday I will take that to the woodshed. I know a little bit too much about that book. Claire Massoud, an otherwise great writer. Riveting Complexity. Okay. Anne Lamott, beautiful and painful at the same time, just like real life. That's a statement that means nothing. Nigella Lawson, I was just bowled over by this book. Well, that's a statement that could be interpreted in several ways, right? You could be bowled over by how crass and heartless and cynical and disgusting it is, like I was. I'm not even finishing this book. These tabs, sorry, my pen fell out. These tabs are as far as I got. I won't do, I did a lot for you, but I cannot stomach this. Now she writes, we're in the prologue. Okay, 3 pages into the prologue, maybe 5, page 5, of her mother. When the pandemic started, she was her normal alcoholic self. By the end, she was lying in bed all day, drinking a bottle or 2 of wine. My stepfather was taking care of her, but he couldn't walk and was incontinent. At some point, I found poop in my mom's bed. I've always hated, Molly's talking about herself. I'd always hated the idea of writing a book like this. Liar. I think, Molly, you're a liar. I've always hated the idea that the luck of being born into a famous-ish literary family might undermine anything else I've achieved. Listen, sister, you've only gotten this book deal and your little perches over on MSNBC and CNN because you have a famous mother and a famous last name. That is it. You know, and I am really railing on Nepo babies. The more I've thought about this, the more I've come down on the side of like, these people are taking jobs and opportunities that would otherwise go to much more deserving, hardworking people who probably possess more than one original thought rattling around in their brain. I mean, what does CNN and MSNBC execs think about employing a woman who would talk about her own mother like this and memorialize it in the pages of a book? Do you think she's not going to do the same thing to any of her colleagues or bosses? You know, not for nothing. I had a long-standing boss once who confided in me that someone who had left a couple of years later came back around and said, I would love to come back. Would you hire me? Would you give me a job? And this boss said, absolutely not, because you are so indiscreet and you will publish anything about anyone without even so much as asking them, that how on earth could your colleagues possibly trust you? So, you know, just a little heads up to the brain trust over at those organizations. She goes on to say, I've made a career for myself as a political writer. And I can say that writing and thinking about politics has been a liberation for me, another garbage word in the culture. And we're going to watch some of Molly's, contributions on the airwaves. Here she is talking about her mother, realizing her mother has dementia. I sat on the sofa and watched my mother try to remember the year that she was born. You know, fuck off, Molly Jong-Fast. As discussed on this podcast, my mother has dementia. I talked about this with Bruce Willis and his family, who, in my opinion, are exploiting the shit out of this poor guy who doesn't know where he is or what day it is. You know, the only thing that you can protect for a loved one who is suffering with dementia is their dignity. And Molly Jong-Fast, this book, just serves as a tar pit of her emotional rage and her resentments and her grievances that she's not, because she deep down knows she's not as smart and she's not as accomplished, she's not as popular or as well liked or wanted as her mother. And now she's getting her revenge out on her mother, okay? And then guess who sits down with her and gives her a lengthy profile with a glamour shot? Yeah, you guessed it. The New York fucking Times, which we'll get to that, okay? But first, let's watch this intellect on MSNBC. Let's watch her attempt to explain to Joe this great political thinker, this great political pundit, how it was that Kamala Harris was definitely going to win the campaign and had definitely learned from all the mistakes of 2016. Here we go.
The question is, will it make a difference?
Well, that's the big question. But, I was in Wilmington and I was talking to them, and they are, everyone is always like, in the Hillary campaign, in the Harris campaign, they want you to think that they're losing, right? They have taken a totally different tact. They really want everyone to be worried. They want everyone to be out there. And I think that's a lesson they've gotten from 2016, right?
So, first of all, she's an accomplished pundit. And what's really funny in this book, by the way, I'm not going to hold up the jacket again. I'm not giving her the publicity. She talks a lot, like way too much, about like being in the car in a taxi, by the way, which means they don't send cars for her, which means they don't think that highly of her. Okay. She's a low rent contributor on her way to the newsrooms at CNN or MSNBC because she's so important, and she's crying. She's crying all the time in the car. And you know why she's crying? Because her husband has pancreatic cancer. And by the way, she writes about this in the book. Every time her poor husband is going in for a surgery, she's either, she's like, great, okay, I'm going to drop you at the hospital, and then I'm going home to take a bath and a nap. I couldn't make this up. There's one moment in the book where he calls her from the hospital. He's had to go like to the hospital because his stent has come unaffixed, or it's unmoored, and he's bleeding, and she's at the airport going to LA because she needs a few days to herself. I mean, I think she took the kids, but she really needs some alone time, to gather. And he calls her and says, they're wheeling me into emergency surgery. And she says, do you want me to come back? And he texts her, if I'm recalling correctly, and the text reads, just go. Okay, this is who we're dealing with. This is who we're dealing with. And there she is saying, oh, the Kamala team, like they're just saying, like they just want everybody to think they're losing, but it's a real strategy. I mean, this woman is a moron. Okay, let's look at this second clip of her attempting to get a thought out.
Everyone you talk to in that campaign says it's going to be tight. We'd rather be us than them. That's right. What they always say. And, she's going, like even the fact that she's going to Pittsburgh instead of Philly, right? These are choices. Right. And she is going to go to Philly too, and she has, but like these are choices. And I think they've done a lot of really smart stuff. They've got Bill Clinton out there in the South. They've got Obama out there. They've got Michelle out there. I mean, there really is just a sort of very thoughtful campaign, spending a ton of money. They have $1 billion. Look, we don't know what's going to happen, but it will not be because there was some huge blind spot they missed.
We all know what's going to happen and it's not going to be because there's some big blind spot they missed. Amazing. Also, they're doing a really thoughtful campaign, and they're doing like, you know what I'm going to point out to you? This thing that has never happened in campaigns before, where they get party leaders. Like, notice that Bill Clinton's out there and Obama's out there. Like, oh my God. Oh, I can't believe people in the control room weren't like, just get her off the set. She is too dumb even for Joe and Mika. Okay. Let's watch Molly, this great intellect, over on MSNBC. And okay, she's doing a panel with Mika Brzezinski, who is the intellectual equivalent of, when you have a light bulb that's like, zzz, zzz, zzz. That's Mika's brain. And Mika has long been a bête noire for me because I think she brings women down. She has this summit called Know Your Worth, which is bullshit. She has that job because she's a Nepo baby as well. She wound up leaving her husband for Joe Scarborough. All she does on that set, as she has these many years, is when she's in a conversation that's above her head, which is 99% of them, she rolls her eyes at all the boys at the table and sighs. Like, can you believe what I have to deal with here? Which is just clearly a mask for not having a thing to say of value, okay? So it's a winning panel. It's Mika. It's Molly Jong-Fast with her streaked hair and her terrible eyewear. And, I'm just going after her on every level because she's terrible and she deserves it. And then in the lower corner, we have Huma Abedin, who we discussed at great length last episode. And you guys really loved that. Okay. Again, Hillary Clinton's handbag carrier from the age of 19 to her current age of 48 or 49. It's indeterminate because somebody's fudging a little bit. People do it. Anyway, let's watch Mika ask Molly what she's learned from Mika.
Women in particular often don't use their voices enough. I'm hoping that each one of you could share a moment in your life when standing up for what you believed in or for yourself seemed daunting, but you did it anyways. It doesn't have to be huge, just a moment that mattered. Molly, I'll start with you.
So my moment is that I had wanted more for myself in my career, and I had this friend called Mika who said to me, you can't step down, you have to push for the things you want. And I was like a little hesitant and worried to do it. And that moment when you said that to me actually really helped me. And it was kind of a demarcation line in my career about just sort of going for things I wanted. And so that is my moment.
My friend Mika said to me, okay, we are just, they used to call it log rolling. We're just fluffing each other's feathers. She gave me the very specific advice that you can't step down, you have to push forward. It's a mixed metaphor, which is, on par for Mika's level of intellect, in my opinion. And, she sounds like Hoda Kotb there. She sounds like Hoda Kotb. It's a bunch of gibberish and it means nothing. And Molly's accomplished really nothing. And, if she should consider, if she wants to stay in broadcasting, finding a vocal coach who can help with that gravelly, nasally, glottal voice. Okay. It's somewhat reminiscent of Kamala Harris. Okay. And, she was also on MSNBC bragging when she was bragging about this piece she wrote for Vanity Fair. We're going to touch on what Anna Wintour is doing over at Vanity Fair right now. I've gotten emails from you guys asking about it. So, but I also just want to briefly mention this New York Times piece, this profile of her. It's dated May 31, 2025. She is shot. You got to look at this picture. She's sitting on a sofa barefoot. All these women who go barefoot, again, I cannot stand it. Like, what are you doing? Put those feet away. She's got like chunky, stubby feet. Put them away. She's sitting in what looks like her apartment on a sofa, holding one of like at least 3, I think, of her very expensive dogs. Here's what she says, is she's quoted as saying vis-a-vis her mother, who again has dementia, and writing this book. And I just quoted, there was the day, not verbatim, but then I found poop in my mother's bed. Fuck off. Molly, quote, it feels like a huge betrayal. I sold out Erica Jong. Yeah, you did. But it's sort of in honor of her. It's not. It's not in honor of her, okay? It was the only way that you could get this kind of media attention, booked on Fresh Air with the insufferable Terry Gross. I'm Terry Gross. Or a piece in the New York Times, which, by the way, I encourage you guys to go look at that piece, and they left reader comments on, unlike the Huma Abedin unholy union to Alex Soros last weekend in the Hamptons. Those comments are shut off. Erica Jong, see? Daughter. Not much. Molly Jong-Fast profile comments are up, and they are brutal. Okay. Again, this is a self-selecting group of people who read the Times and then go watch MSNBC and CNN, and they hate her. And I'm reading from one right here on my computer screen. When I look at who gets the space on the front page of the New York Times, my eye rolls. And I wonder why I pay for a subscription. Molly is a Nepo baby, pure and simple. She needed a lot, in caps, of chances that other people simply don't get to write something that is readable. Agreed. She had a book that came out in 2006. It flopped. It was another thing about being the daughter of a famous mother, because that's all that's going on in that head. That's it. Haven't read her latest yet, but her first books were absolute garbage. This commenter you should come over to the troublemaker side, okay? Book deals obtained because of who her mother was. Having gone to school with Molly, now we've got some intel. I can tell you, allegedly, I can tell you that Erica wasn't kind to her. Fine. But as of Molly, she says these days, she's mostly a deaf mute when she's given a chance to appear on shows like Morning Joe. If it weren't for what her mother worked for, Molly would be homeless. That is a troublemaker lurking in the comments section of the New York Times. We're spreading. We're spreading. We're spreading. I'm so happy.